When some people think of clerics, they think of the Healbot cleric, or the Channel Smite damage cleric, or maybe even a necromancer. But can we build a cleric that's a little more interesting? Maybe one that focuses on debuffing opponents with things like the Sicken condition and diseases, maybe even knock enemies prone. I think we can. Let's get started. So, as I've said, we are building a cleric for this build. And for our doctrine, I think we're going to go with the Cloistered Cleric. We're focusing on debuffing, so we need our DC to be as high as possible. And War Priest just won't cut it. And for our deity, there's only one that gives us the domains we need. At least that I'm aware of. And that is Urgathoa, otherwise known as the Pallid Princess. For ancestry, we're going ratfolk with the duskwalker heritage. We are focusing on debuffing in this build, so what better flavor than to be a diseased rat that came back from the boneyard. Plus these two together will give us some good ancestry feats for this build. For background, I went with cultist, but you could go with any background you want as long as you get the stats you need. For starting ability scores, we do want our wisdom to be high, but we also need high charisma and high dexterity. So we're going with strength 10, dexterity 16, constitution 12, intelligence 10, wisdom 16, and charisma 14. Of course, as a cloistered cleric, we do get the domain initiate feat at first level. And we're going to go with the indulgence domain here. This of course will give us the overstuffed domain spell. So we can target one living creature within 30 feet and force them to make a fortitude saving throw. They might be anywhere from sickened 1 to sickened 2, depending on their saving throw. Also, as long as the target is sickened by this spell, they take a minus 10 foot status penalty to their speed. Then for our ancestry feat at this level, we're going to go with chance death. Once per day, if we would die as a result of a failed saving throw or recovery check, we can use a reaction to re-roll that check, but we must use the second result even if it's worse. But honestly, it really doesn't matter whether we roll worse or not, because we're going to die anyway. For level 2, our first class feat is going to be Reach Spell. A lot of the spells that we want for this build are going to be touch spells, and we really don't want to be right next to enemies, so this will give those a range of 30 feet instead of touch. Then for the free archetype, we'll be taking the Sorcerer Dedication. And we want the Hag bloodline for the occult list here. For our general feats, we want Canny Acumen for our reflex saves, Die Hard, Toughness, Fleet, and Incredible Initiative. At level 4, for our first class feat, we're going to go with Expanded Domain Initiates for the Plague Domain. This of course gives us the Divine Plagues focus spell. This allows us to make the foe clumsy, enfeebled, or stupefied, our choice, and possibly slowed if they get to stage 2. This spell's range is pretty limited, but that's another reason why we took Reach Spell, to increase its range to 45 feet instead of 15. Then we want to take basic Bloodline Spell for the Jealous Hex focus spell. This allows us to inflict a condition on the enemy depending on their highest ability score. Strength is enfeebled, dexterity is clumsy, drained is constitution, and stupefied is any of the mental ability scores. On a tie, the target decides. The target gets an initial will saving throw against this effect and at the start of each of its turns. For our ancestry feat at level 5, we're going to take Skull Creeper. This will give us trained proficiency in intimidation and the intimidating glare skill feats. Plus, if we spend 50 gold for a splendid mask, then we get a +1 item bonus to our intimidation checks. At this point, our charisma is going to be decently high, so why not intimidate foe? Alright, for the first teamwork reports. At this point, we don't have a whole lot yet. We can make the foe sicken due to our overstuffed domain spell. We can also debuff them in the best way possible due to our Jealous Hex focus spell. And we can hit any of their ability scores that we want with our Divine Plagues focus spell. We can also be pretty good at intimidating foes due to our charisma and the Skull Creeper feats. We are going to be using our focus spells a lot in this build, but we're not high enough level to actually get them back all at once. So we do need to be careful at this point as to how many focus points we are spending. But we can debuff foes in other ways using our prepared spell slots. And of course, we will want to be doing damage with our harm spells as well, when we're not debuffing foes. Okay, for level 6, we will want to take Cast Down, knock enemies prone with our harm spells. Then we'll want to take Anoint Ally. This will allow us to give our ally our blood magic effect, which will give them some damage resistance. Then we'll pick up at level 8, Advanced Domain for the Plague Domain. This will give us the Foul Miasma focus spell, which will allow us to give an area to our diseases instead of just affecting one target. Then, of course, we will want to take Basic, Expert, and Master Sorcerer Spellcasting as soon as we possibly can, because more occult spells is always good. Then at level 9, our ancestry feat is going to be Rat Form. This allows us to transform into a rat, with the effects of Pest Form. There really isn't a better ancestry feat we can take here, and this could allow us to get out of sticky situations, and maybe scout ahead if we need to. Next up is Surging Focus, so that if an ally goes down, we can get one of our focus points back. Then Bloodline Breath for even more occult spells. At level 12, it's Domain Focus to get our focus points back quicker. We want to pick up Resist Ruin. We gain Resistance 5 to negative energy, and we can cast Death Ward as an innate spell once per day. Thus we can protect an ally from death effects without using a spell slot. At level 14, it's time for Occult Evolution. This is just an extra sorcerer spell, plain and simple, and we can change it every single day. We also become trained in one skill of our choice, which I never get into skills because that's going to depend on your campaign mainly. Then, of course, on the free archetype side, we need to take Advanced Bloodline for the Horrific Visage Bloodline spell. We can cast 5th level sorcerer spells right now, so this spell can make them anywhere from Frightened 1 to Frightened 3 and Fleeing, depending on their will saving throw. And this hits all enemies within a 30-foot emanation. It does have to be centered on you, but a 30-foot emanation is quite a lot. Next up is Eternal Bane. This gives us the constant effects of the Bane spell with a radius of 15 feet. Except that we can't increase its area. This will make it a little harder for enemies to hit us in melee, which of course is something that we want to avoid. And taking this also means that we don't have to debuff enemies that are close to us. We can save our spells for enemies that are a little further away. Next up we have Soul Sight. This gives us Soul Sight as an imprecise sense out to a range of 60 feet. Thus it will be harder for anything with a soul to sneak up on us. And this does include most non-mindless undead. For our final ancestry feat for this build, we're going to take Yamirage's Grandeur. Once per day for 2 actions, we can deal 14d6 slashing damage and 4d6 persistent slashing damage in a 30-foot cone. This requires a basic reflex saving throw using our spell DC. If the target happens to critically fail on their saving throw, they also become sickened too. Not only is this great damage, but it can also get one of the best conditions in the game on multiple enemies. So definitely pick this one up if you get this far. At level 18, it's time to take Domain Wellspring, allowing us to get our focus points back even quicker than before. And the last 2 feats for this build are going to be Signature Spell Expansion, giving us an extra signature spell, and Greater Bloodline. This gives us the You're Mine Bloodline spell. For 2 actions, we can make a creature within 30 feet make a will saving throw. The target might be stunned or even controlled depending on their saving throw. And since we can definitely cast 7th level sorcerer spells at this point, if they critically fail their saving throw, they're controlled by us for 1 minute. And it's always good to turn enemies against each other. So for the second teamwork report, I do want to talk about prepared and spontaneous spells here. Not the focus spells, I already covered those, but other spells you could take for this belt. Phantom Pain is pretty much a must-take for this belt. It is just way too good for a low-level spell. And of course, we can prepare Goblin Pox even though it isn't a divine or occult spell, thanks to our deity. Mariner's Curse can be very effective as well, especially if you happen to be on the sea. Horrifying Blood Loss can also be effective if you've got a party member that specializes in bleed damage. I'd also pick up Internal Insurrection if you have access to it. And of course, Phantasmal Killer is always great for a build like this. Basically, we want debuffs, specifically status debuffs, on the enemy. If you run out of good ones, then start taking spells that buff allies, as that will help too. If you want a Google Sheet for this build and a bunch of other builds, you can check out the link in the description below for my Patreon page. You can also check out my Facebook and my Twitter page. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, teamwork is vital.